So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're going to be looking at something very important in baseball history. For some, it's very controversial. Some baseball experts call him one of the worst everyday players of the 1970s and 1980s. But for me, he was very consistent, a great defensive player, two-time world champion, and how he got to the Major League Baseball was a story in itself. They should really make a movie about it. So for Montreal Expo fans and Mets fans and Reds fans, we're going to be talking about one of the players who was traded for Tom Seaver in the famous Cincinnati Met deal, the great Doug Flynn. Now, Robert Douglas Flynn Jr., born April 18th in 1951, played Major League Baseball from 1975 to 85 as a very competent infielder for the Reds, the Mets, the Rangers, the Expos, and a lot of people forget he played for the Tigers. He was a member of two world title winning teams with the Reds in 75 and 76, won a Gold Glove award in 1980 as a member of the Mets pretty well soon after he came over from the Reds. Now, the native of Lexington, Kentucky, beautiful area of the States, attended Bryan Station High School where he started in baseball, basketball, and football, playing quarterback on a 12-1 team. He eventually went to University of Kentucky on a combination baseball-basketball scholarship. Now, while attending Kentucky, Flynn and some of his friends decided to go to a Cincinnati Reds tryout camp, and the rest is history. He eventually made a cut. Now, after one more tryout camp and yet another audition at Riverfront Stadium, the Reds signed him as an amateur free agent in 1971. Now, Flynn batted .245 with 6 homers and 113 RBIs in over 3 seasons in the Reds farm system. Still, his glove impressed Reds manager Sparky Anderson enough, and despite having played shortstop predominantly in the minors, he went to spring training in 1975, battling with prospects Darrell Cheney, the great Dan Dreesen, and of all people, John Vukovich for the open third base job. He eventually made the team, but as a utility infielder, and made his major league debut on April 9th against the Dodgers at shortstop. Now, just like Kevin Bijou with Toronto, he could play multiple positions. Now, starting the following night, he scored his first major league run after reaching on a force play in the 4th inning. 3 innings later, he chased Dodgers starter Rick Rhoden out of the game with his first career hit, a single to center. Now, we're here where he got controversial. He batted just .172 with no homers or RBIs in April. With Reds third baseman batting a combined .162, Anderson shifted perennial All-Star and former National League MVP Pete Rose III, with George Foster taking over in left. The shift worked, as the team won a record 108 games that season to storm to a first-place finish in the NL West by 20 games over the Dodgers. The reduced role also seemed to do Flynn's bat some good. Over the rest of the season, he batted .296 with 20 RBIs. He hit his first major league home run on May 21st against the Mets, a game in which his future trade mate, Tom Seaver, was a losing pitcher. Now, Flynn saw semi-regular action early in '76 due to back injury to Joe Morgan. During a 9-game stretch in June, he batted .382. I remember that time, ladies and gentlemen, and I think Dave Van Horn said Morgan may not be playing, but Flynn is doing a great job. Now, he ended up appearing in 93 games that year for the Big Red Machine, as they became called because of their great lineup, and batted .283 with 1 homer and again 20 RBIs. He won the 75 and 76 world titles, and Flynn's only postseason appearance came as a defensive replacement in the 76 NL Series against the Phillies. Now, there was no room for him at the end in both finals, but he was there when needed, sort of like Manny Trio with the Oakland A's. Now, Flynn's role with the Reds decreased drastically in '77. Through June 17, he appeared in only 36 games, mostly as a late-inning defensive replacement for Rose at third. Meanwhile, Tom Seaver was in a contract dispute with Mets chairman M. Donald Grant, and eventually the big trade, which he never forgave Flynn for and everybody else in the trade, Grant traded Seaver on June 15, '77 for good prospect Steve Henderson, Dan Norman, the very underrated Pat Zachary, and of course, Doug. Now, Flynn's playing time increased substantially upon his arrival in New York City, basically because nobody else was good on defense at the time for the Mets. He only batted .191 with no homers and 14 RBIs when arriving with New York. Now, most of his playing time came at short, but he spent time at second as well. Following the season, The Mets reacquired former number 1 overall draft pick Tim Foley to play short. Just as pitchers and catchers were reporting in spring training, the Mets eventually sold a contract of underrated second baseman Felix Millan, one of the heroes of the 73 World Series squad, to the Taiyo Whales of the Nippon League, with the intention of using Flynn at second. Now, he began the season at second base, but shifted to short when Foley injured his knee at the end of April, and returned there periodically throughout the remainder of the season. All told, he logged 430 innings at short, committing just 7 errors for a .968 fielding percentage. At second, he logged the league's second-best fielding percentage, behind the newly acquired Dave Cash from Montreal at .986. With the bat, Flynn produced a modest .237 batting average with no homers and 36 RBIs in the 8th spot of manager Joe Torre's anemic batting order. Now, he also tied Lenny Randle and the future Expo Joe Youngblood for the team lead with 8 triples. Now, Flynn's first home run as a Met was a 3-run shot against, of all people, Gaylord Perry on May 1st, '79. It was also his only career 4 RBI game. And now, on June 12th, just 3 days shy of the second anniversary of the Midnight Massacre, which the Seaver trade was called, he hit his second home run and inside the Parker against the Reds to cap off a 12-6 Mets victory. Now, Flynn seemed to be at his best against his former team. A week earlier, he doubled in the tying run and later scored the go-ahead run in the Mets' 5-3 win over Cincinnati and produced a .310 batting average with 7 RBIs against Reds pitching. All told, 79 was Flynn's best offensive season, .243 average with a career high in homers with 4 and RBIs with 61. He also began to emerge as one of the better fielding second basemen in the NL. He led the league in putouts and double plays turned, and was third in the league with a .983 fielding percentage. Now, on August 5th, 1980, Flynn tied a major league record with 3 triples in one game, which I think will never be duplicated with the current shift style in both leagues. He also scored all 3 times on the triples. For the week, he was 13 for 31, and with 5 runs scored and 5 RBIs to be named NL Player of the Week. Still, Flynn's greatest contribution to his club was with his glove. His .991 fielding percentage was tops in the league, which led to a Golden Glove at second. He was just the 3rd Met ever to receive this honor. Tommy Agee in 1970, and of course the great Mr. Met Bud Harrelson in '71, being the first 2. Now, he did sign a new 5-year contract before the strike-shortened '81 season, but that did not prevent it from being his last season as a Met. With top prospect Wally Backman ready to make the jump to the majors, they traded him to the Texas Rangers with Dan Boitano for the former star Jim Kern at the end of the campaign. Kern was then packaged with Greg Harris and Alex Trevino for George Foster, of all people, from the Reds. So technically, he was traded for Seaver and George Foster, directly and indirectly. Now, just prior to the start of the '82 season, the Rangers traded incumbent second baseman Bump Wills, Maury's son, to the Cubs, opening the starting job for Flynn. As the season wore on, however, rookie prospect Mike Rickard began getting the buckle of playing time at second, with Flynn splitting his time between second and short. Now, the Montreal Expos had used 7 different players at second base. That was a long year for second basemen over the Expos' tenure, and were desperate need of an upgrade at that position when he bought Flynn's contract from Texas on August 2nd. Now, he held the starting second base job with the Expos through '84, but in the '84 winter meetings, the Expos acquired very underrated third baseman Vance Law from the Chicago White Sox. Law had also played some second and was a shortstop in the minors. The intention was to convert him into a second baseman in Montreal. Once the experiment proved successful, the Expos placed Flynn on waivers, much to the consternation of Expos fans. He was very popular in Quebec. Now, though the Astros expressed interest, he ended up signing with the Tigers for the remainder of the season and retired from baseball when the Tigers released him in spring training in '86. After retirement, he was also involved in slow-pitch softball, playing on several traveling tournament teams in the '80s and '90s. Now, overall, 3,853 at-bats, average of .238, with 7 homers and 284 RBIs, and a stellar .982 percentage. Now, Flynn's father Bobby had played in the Brooklyn organization in 1948, and later played semi-pro ball with the Lexington Hustlers. Now, while his son was coming up through the Reds minor league system, Bobby was also climbing politically, serving as a Kentucky state senator. His mother also played second base and fast pitch for years. Now, after retirement, he spent a couple of years working in the Mets minor league system and then headed up the state of Kentucky's anti-drug program. Now, in 1981, in a diversion of his career, he began singing country songs at Cody's, a club at 6th Avenue and 16th Street in Manhattan, on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. When baseball went on strike in 81, he traveled briefly with the Oak Ridge Boys and sang on tour with them. He's still an avid singer and pairs up with, of all people, former Reds teammate Johnny Bench at their successful golf tournament every year on Cabaret Night. He's a very big part of the Mets and Reds reunion events, and also served as the chairman of the Reds fantasy camp and guest for the Mets camp. Now a survivor of thyroid cancer, 2010. He also spent time in 2013 working as a part-time radio broadcaster for the Reds, filling in for several games a year when their regular complement of broadcasters had some time off. He also has appeared periodically on the Reds TV broadcasts as the Reds Hall of Famer, has shown up on Fox Sports Ohio hosting feature segments. He also appears on Kentucky Wildcats baseball games carried on the SEC Network and SC Network Plus. Now, he's also been a host of a weekly half-hour magazine program on Kentucky educational television called Kentucky Life. So from a multi-athlete star in Kentucky to walk on the Reds to being a hometown hero to many in Cincinnati, New York, and Montreal. Very popular in Montreal. Expo fans of a certain age remember Doug Flynn as someone that taught a lot of young players who followed the Expos how to play that solid second base that Expo second baseman had difficulty playing before he arrived. So there are members of the media and the baseball fraternity that criticize Doug Flynn. I'm not going to criticize him. I saw him play. I wish all second basemen could play like Doug Flynn. And when I see Kevin Biggio and I see Espinal and some of these young players playing the second base position, it's always about consistency, and Doug Flynn was consistent. You couldn't expect him to hit 300. Like nowadays, the second basemen hit 50 home runs. That was not his game. His dare was be consistent, to bat number 7 or number 8, to drive in occasional runs. But it's kind of ironic. 2 titles with the Reds, okay? Traded as part of Tom Seaver, then literally indirectly traded in the George Foster deal, which brought him to the Mets. And for me, a very interesting career. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here with our Vintage Major League Baseball podcast, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share. Please let your friends know that if you have any requests, please let us know in the comment section. We appreciate you dropping in. As we like to say in Old Olympic Stadium, La Vedette Expo, Doug Flynn. I don't know how they made Doug Flynn's name sound French, but we did it. Thanks for listening, ladies and gentlemen, and don't forget, swing for the fences. Have a good day. Bye.